Hello, beautiful people. Thank you for tuning in to this special episode of The Social Mind, where we're talking about disorder on the public roads and how we can address it. In recent times, driver hostility has become more prevalent in Grenada, and one can argue that road rage, reckless or careless driving, and increased vehicular accidents and the total disregard for other users of the public roads has become a public health hazard and a safety issue, particularly as I mentioned in the last couple of weeks. Now, the number of fatal accidents happening has increased day by day on our public roads. And I would argue again that it is posing a health challenge for all concerned, in particular, I suppose, everyone who's using the roads, pedestrians as well as drivers. Some say the approach to implement the rules and regulations available to prevent road accidents often is ineffective. Now, today I have Mr. Troy Paul, Police Constable 838, attached to the Traffic Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, to talk with me about the disorder we've been seeing and experiencing on the public roads and how we can address that as a society. Constable Paul, welcome to the Social Mind, and thank you for being here with me today. Just tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we start our discussion.
Good morning, and good morning to all your listeners as well. My name is Troy Paul, as you've alluded to, a member of the Royal Grenada Police Force for the past 11 years, almost going on 12. And I've been attached to the traffic department for over 10 years. I also do accident investigation as well. And I have a wealth of knowledge in relation to a lot of the traffic laws. And we're here this morning, nonetheless, to discuss the topic which you stated. And I trust that the information that will be disseminated will be heard by your listeners and will be put into practice so that we can have a safer road at the end of the day and at the end of the year, so we wouldn't have the statistics that we were seeing on our nation's road.
Absolutely. So I suppose let's jump right in. What do you think, from your experience working in the traffic department, what do you think is responsible for this road rage and hostility that we're seeing on our public roads?
In my opinion, there's a lot of factors that may be contributing to road rage. And when you use road rage, we're talking about because we're seeing here that drivers drive in a particular manner, and there must be something that triggers that. And one might say maybe lack of knowledge in relation to understanding road signs, road laws of Grenada. Secondly, one may look in terms of the amount of vehicles on our road at this particular time, because if I have to go to a particular destination and the road condition especially is not conducive. You're seeing we have a lot of potholes, a lot of the roads are not smooth as we expect it to be. And remember, shocks and other vehicle parts are not cheap. And also we may look at the manner in which other drivers drive, which may cause other persons to be aggressive along the road and drive in a particular manner, especially if they're late for work again and have to get to the destination at a particular time. They may drive in an aggressive manner to get to their destination or maybe get on time. So there is a lot of factors that may contribute to the manner in which a lot of persons drive on the road. But we're going to look into them and see how we can curb those ills we're seeing along our nation's road.
Okay, absolutely. So, you kind of alluded to it. So in the last few years, we have seen an increase in the number of new drivers on the roads. For example, I suppose when you're using the roads in terms of parking, right? You see traffic on both sides of the roads I mean, a whole quarter mile. So tell me, what do you think? I mean, do you think, I know when we are learning to drive and we go through the highway code and we follow it to a T when we go into to get our license. But for some reason, I would argue here, I would contend that all that training goes out the door once you get that driver's license in your hand. You just become, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I can't say what's happening. So, do you think because of the new and one would argue inexperienced drivers on the road, that's also a cause for some of the vehicular traffic we're experiencing?
Um, I wouldn't say that, but at the end of the day, experience, as we normally say, is the greatest teacher. And one with a lot of road experience will look in terms of defensive driving in relation to preventing accidents. But new drivers, they are the ones who, because as you've alluded to, when someone just get their license, they're still in the process, they're still in the learning process, getting to understand the road network, getting to understand the vehicle that they're
The
driving,
vehicle.
and getting to
Absolutely.
understand a lot about driving in itself. And they have not gotten that road experience that they so need. But in terms of cause of the accidents and so forth, we're seeing that even young as well as experienced drivers are contributing factors to those accidents. Um, but to say the young or inexperienced drivers are mainly contributing, I wouldn't say that. It has a lot to do in the manner in which one's drive on a particular road. But going back just a bit, I just want to let drivers especially know that we need to continue when we just started to drive in that manner. Because when one is learning to drive or going to get their license, we see them practicing all the necessaries that they have to in order to obtain the license that is needed for by the licensing authority. So they practice all the hand signals, they practice everything that they need to do, slow down when they need to
Indicators.
stop,
Mm-hmm.
especially. And we're seeing that once they obtain that license, as you said, everything goes out the door. And those are the things that contribute to a lot of persons being charged for offenses that could have been avoided if they had only continued the practices that they started with. And this we're seeing a rise in the number of traffic offenses by a lot of these drivers.
Okay, so do you think then that the highway code is appropriate to handle the increased vehicular traffic on the roads? And again, um, the the lack of respect for others on the road, or do you think that the highway code is outdated? Is it dealing with the the amount of traffic that's on our roads right now? Do you think
I
the highway
believe
code
that
is
the highway
appropriate
code
in
is
that
more than
sense?
sufficient.
Hmm.
The highway code is more than sufficient to deal with driving practices and because the highway code is a guide to driving, and it teaches you
Absolutely.
the life lessons that you need to understand and know about driving and getting by on our roads. And once we practice those, no matter the amount of traffic we have on our nation's road, we will continue to practice safe driving. Um, in relation to dealing with the amount of traffic, because you see, our roads was designed back then. It wasn't designed for the amount of traffic that we have now.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so we're seeing a lot of driving because right now we have over in excess of almost 50,000 vehicles along our nation's road. That is almost half our population.
Right.
And that is a lot of vehicles. And we're seeing vehicles coming in every month on the port. So therefore, it is a concern. And however, with the increased vehicles, what it causes is that because when you have increased traffic on your road, then therefore it will take you a longer time to get to your destination. If you didn't prioritize your trip and you didn't plan your
Right.
trip. So going back, so sometimes that could cause as we started with a bit of road rage, in terms of me having to be in traffic for over half an hour, and it persons get impatient, and as a result of that, when they get an open space, one may tend to speed and drive in a manner that they can maybe try to escalate a little faster to get to the destination. But the highway code is more than sufficient, in my opinion. It all has to do with the driver's mentality in terms of how do I get to my destination despite the condition of traffic going forward.
Mm. Yeah, because I notice people are always in a rush, and sometimes, yes, it's a matter of time issue. So I guess we should understand with the increased vehicular traffic on the road, we may need to leave home a little bit earlier. Leaving, let's say, Ghana's might have been 10 to 15 minutes to St. George's. Now it's about 45 minutes to an hour in the rush hour. And as you said, there's an increase, almost 50,000 increase vehicles on our roads, and we don't have that road network for that amount of vehicles. So I suppose that's something that needs to be looked into in terms of extension, new roads, and maybe extension of our road networks. One of the things that I've been seeing is that persons, drivers as well as pedestrians, do not know how to use, let's say, the pedestrian crossing. How can we educate the public about the appropriate use or the appropriate ways of using, as I mentioned, the pedestrian crossing, the appropriate side of the road to walk on? It depends on the direction you're going. And the direction, let's say, in terms of moving vehicles or parked vehicles, I see a lot of drivers parking behind blind spots. I know I give you a mouthful here, but let's start with the pedestrians and I'll go through them, those that I want you to highlight again.
Yes. So even today, we're seeing the misuse of pedestrian crossing here in Grenada, both by drivers and pedestrian, but more so pedestrian. Because I want to stick a pin here because your safety is paramount. And sometimes we're seeing a lot of pedestrians sauntering or just modeling across a pedestrian crossing. I'm not understanding the implications. Yes, a pedestrian crossing is a safe place designed for a pedestrian to cross from one side to the other or to where they're going. But however, we must understand that there are rules to be followed. However, we does not have any law in Grenada as it regards to pedestrian crossing. But we want pedestrians to know that if you're using the pedestrian crossing, you come to that area, you stop, you wait, you make sure that no vehicle is coming. If no vehicle is coming, you cross from one side to the other. However, if a vehicle is coming and you're in that area, you signal by maybe putting your hand, not in a manner that you're waving, but you just to identify yourself to the driver. I guess
in other countries they have the pointing sign that you want to go to the other side. So I guess you point in the direction that you want to go.
Or you put your hand intending or signaling that you intend to cross. So once that is done, you make sure that you have eye contact with the driver, and you make sure that driver sees you and come to a complete stop.
Right.
That is very important. Make sure that vehicle come to a complete stop, because we're seeing a lot of vehicles these days with mechanical failures and a lot of problems surrounding that. So once that vehicle has come to a complete stop, you cross briskly from one side to the other. So we don't want you to be sauntering and you're watching the driver and you're modeling across. Because remember, the longer you take on a pedestrian crossing, especially in built-up areas, you will have built-up traffic in that area as well. So you need to be mindful of that. So pedestrians, take heed. If you're crossing, you make sure that you signal to the vehicle, go to that area, you stop, you signal to the driver that you intend to cross. Make sure that vehicle come to a complete stop, then you cross briskly from one side to the other, and you get to your destination safely.
Right.
So
And now the other one is what's
yes,
the correct side of the road we should be walking on depends on the direction
yes,
that
we normally
we're
advise
going with.
persons that do not give the traffic your back. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Giving your traffic to the back, as we said, a lot of vehicles have mechanical failure. And you giving traffic to your back, even as yesterday, there was an accident where some students were walking and their backs were turned and a vehicle ended up colliding with them. Don't want to give too much information. However,
Right.
but we've seen in recent times that a lot of mechanical failures in vehicles. And you, if you were walking in that road and the particular side you're walking on and you're seeing the oncoming traffic and you see that that vehicle made a swerve coming to your direction, you will have time or at least some time to evade so that you can save your life and maybe others.
Right.
So we always advise persons to do not give the traffic your back. So walk in the direction of the traffic that is coming to you.
I noticed you.
Also,
I know.
go
Before you
ahead.
continue, I noticed that you're saying it appears that there's a lot of mechanical failures. What? How can that be addressed? Because I know that one has to go and inspect their vehicle ever so often, and you have to service the vehicle as well. Service the vehicle, I think it's every 3 months, something like that. And if we experiencing those mechanical failures on the road, it means that we are not being responsible citizens because we are endangering, I suppose, our lives and that of others, definitely. So I suppose there's something that we need to do here, and there's a lot about I guess the transformation process. Maybe that could be part of our transformation as we move forward, ensuring that we we do what we need to do, and also there are mechanism or policies in place that we can really charge persons when they're really not doing what they're supposed to do. But that's a side note. Continue.
Yes, if I may just address that just a little bit. In
Okay.
relation to that, because you see, when one comes to get their vehicle inspected, they do all the necessaries to get it inspected, and so that that vehicle would appear to be in a good working condition
Proper
before the
condition,
licensing
right?
authority. But after that, they've done nothing until the next inspection cycle. And we know just as how our body functions, so more mechanical, these things do give up on us from time to time. We even see brand new vehicle
Absolutely.
parked along the roadside because it's not maintained properly, or there's something failing it. These things it is mechanical. They do give up from time to time. Sometimes you see you have brand new appliances and they don't last long.
It just stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So
So
the prudent thing as
absolutely
a driver is to observe your vehicle, check your lights, make sure you service it properly. And the problem we're seeing here, a lot of these persons are going by persons who can change parts, but they're not mechanics, they're not certified. So if I'm not certified, I wouldn't know exactly what I am doing. The only thing I know, I can change a part, I can make sure that we take out and we put back, but not
right.
understanding the dynamics surrounding the entire system. I'm not a mechanic, so I don't want to go in depth in it, but that is what
Right.
because we're seeing too many um, mechanics that are not certified, and a lot of persons are going by. They may have the necessary skills to change a part, but they're not certified to deal with a particular issue. And that could be one of the contributing factors in terms of a lot of the mechanical failures we're seeing on the road. Yes.
Okay. So
So moving on, because we were
to
speaking
go back to
about
the direction
pedestrians.
of
Yes.
walking or moving or walking between moving vehicles or parked vehicles. A lot of persons sometimes you think the vehicle has come to a complete stop and then you think you could sneak across the road quickly. I've seen that happen and somebody almost got knocked out in front of me because that person was trying to do that. And I would have observed it in other spaces as well. So I don't think that again, how do we educate the population in terms of you do not move between parked or moving. You do not walk between moving or parked vehicles.
Yes, and that is risky because you coming out from behind a parked vehicle, as we say, you're coming up from a blind spot, and a driver would not be able to see you from a distance. The only thing that they will get is the element of surprise from both you coming out and more so the driver who has to take evasive action when they see you coming out from that parked position or coming out from behind a parked vehicle. And as I always say, safety is paramount, and your safety especially. So because even as children, because children may think that once I see a vehicle, the driver is supposed to see me. Looking at some of the psychology in terms of understanding how children understand traffic, and even sometimes as adults we may think that way as well. But remember that the driver will not be able to see until you come out from that area, and sometimes it's too late. And what we don't want persons to be statistics in terms of motor vehicle accident. So if you have to cross in an open area where the traffic is clear so that you can see the vehicle and also the driver, and the driver can see you from a distance. So we wouldn't have those pedestrian accidents where persons may be able to sustain bodily injuries. And also moving vehicles. A lot of people think that I can time a vehicle by moving. What we've learned is that when you see a vehicle coming, it is hard to determine the speed that vehicle is coming because that vehicle is coming directly to you. You see, if you're on the sideline, you can see the pattern in which the vehicle is moving. But if the vehicle is coming towards you, it's hard to determine the speed of that vehicle. And you may, at that time, you may be have a bad judgment or estimation of that vehicle speed and just end up being a victim to a road accident or even a road fatality, depending on the severity of your injuries.
Yeah, and as you bring up, sometimes children not. I mean, their cognition doesn't work the way that the adults would in terms of how they understand the traffic. What I've seen in recent times as well that vehicles are being parked on the sidewalk, particularly in school areas. I mean, wherever there's a sidewalk. So mostly in the Grandlands area, the vehicles are parked on the sidewalk, and pedestrians have to now go out into the roads to get or to maneuver to get to their destinations, and also parking behind on around blind spots like around a corner and so on. I've seen a lot of that happening as well in recent times. How do we address that? Because we know for a fact that the highway code says, I mean, everything that we discussed in terms of how you cross the highway code, as you adequately says, it addresses all of those things, and for some reason we just don't practice it because we're so, I guess, focused or fixated on where we want to go or what we want to do. We need a park, we need to get out, we need to go over there, and we just block the road, not considering that, hey, there are other motorists and pedestrians that is using that same space as I am. How do we educate people on that? Or re-educate?
So we're seeing all what you spoke of, we're seeing it happening along our nation's road. Persons are parking, especially pedestrian. It is a hazard, especially in the area of a pedestrian crossing, where persons park close to a pedestrian crossing. Because remember, it is supposed to be a safe space, and a safe space is supposed to be safe. So if you're parked close to a pedestrian crossing, it will prevent the driver from seeing that pedestrian intending to cross, depending on the side they want to cross from. And it poses a great hazard and risk because that pedestrian, at least, as I said, once they practice the necessaries that which I spoke of earlier, they will know therefore that it will minimize and reduce the risk of anyone being injured. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a safe space. But when you park in that area, a driver may not think that someone is crossing, and they wouldn't see the person if you're parked. It will obscure the view of the driver. The pedestrian may hear or see that vehicle coming, but more so the driver have a great implication for. And despite, yes, as a driver, you need to slow down when you're approaching a pedestrian to make sure that no one is intended to cross. But still, when you park in those areas, it prohibits the view for the driver to see clearly if anyone is crossing or intend to cross. So we advise persons that it is dangerous to park in the area of a pedestrian crossing. which prevents the view or close to that area. So that area is supposed to be, that's why we normally have cut-off lines, or we call stop lines, where so once you park within that area, it's still considered to be in the pedestrian area or pedestrian zone. So give that some distance for the safety of the pedestrians and even for your safety as well. You've mentioned persons parking along corners and so forth. We know that one cannot see around a corner. We're not Superman or some sort of superhero that
bionic eyes.
When a driver you park around a corner and you expect that driver to notice it. All you will get is the element of surprise, and we know what happens from that, which will a collision, because the driver would not have enough reaction time to respond depending on the speed and the sharpness of the corner. So our laws here, once you park within 30 feet of a corner, it is an offense. It's a ticketable offense, and one can be charged for that as well, because it's dangerous.
Absolutely.
Even parking at intersections and so forth, because it poses a hazard to the traffic, and we know the end result. And even pedestrians too as well. Do not even think about crossing at a corner. It is a no-no. If you love your life, do not attempt.
Absolutely.
Do not attempt to cross on a corner.
So with the increased vehicular traffic on our roads, how should or what should be considered when parking aside the road? Two examples that comes to mind is the road is very, very narrow, and for some reason the Ministry of Works, they extend that road, and all of a sudden that extension of that road becomes somebody's parking lot, right? And creating the same problems that we would have had before the road would have been extended, right? So, and that is happening. I've seen that happening both in our primary and secondary roads. The roads are being extended, but then people start to use it for their parking lot. Two places that come to mind. One of the roads that was recently extended is Golf Course, and then one too. Yeah, we have vehicular traffic on both sides of the roads in 1-2. And then when we go up to Golf Course, we have that extension of the road there. And then if you pass during the day, there's a lineup of traffic there and really obstructing the traffic, because you still have to wait, and the vehicle or traffic isn't flowing as smoothly as I suppose it's intended to when the road was extended. How do we deal with that?
Yes, so we're seeing here, and it's true, especially in the Montooth area, more so because the traffic there is terrible, because it's one of the road networks where a lot of persons used to alleviate the heavy traffic on the Grandlands Road, so they pass through there to get maybe busted by Food Fair or Sugar Mill, and when you get there, you see a lot of vehicles parked along the roadside, which prohibits you from getting to your destination maybe faster or without unwanted obstruction. And persons willfully, blatantly, because of many of times we see that they do that, and they leave their vehicle there even overnight, and they go to conduct business or whatever they have to do. But just to go back a bit, we're seeing a lot of the time persons establishing business places or building house and don't even think about considering having a parking lot or having a place to park off the road. So a lot of persons park along the roadside, creating the obstructions that we're seeing in those areas. For example, Golf Course and Montooth. And we know what happens when we have obstruction. 1 minute of obstruction can cause a buildup of traffic so far that you can even imagine that this is, especially with the influx of vehicles that we have, especially in the busy periods where our traffic are heavy, the morning, and the persons going to work for 8 o'clock, because we know how persons work. They go for 8, finish at 4. So we know within that time that there will be built up of traffic in certain areas, especially along the Grand Ones. And it is an offense which is considered causing obstruction, vehicular obstruction. Because once a vehicle cannot move freely along the road network and it is blocked by another vehicle or anything else that prohibits that vehicle from going through the direction is considered to be vehicular obstruction. And it is an offense as well under Regulation 26.6 of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Regulation. And one can be charged again here for causing obstruction. But more so, I want to look at that factor, emergency vehicles. Persons having emergency and have to get to a destination at a fast pace or in a timely manner. And with those obstructions, that can have a lot of implications for persons getting to seek the necessary medical assistance in a timely manner. Or whatever emergency, imagine that someone's house is on fire and a fire appliance need to get to that destination and we have an obstruction problem. And sometimes a life can be saved by them getting to the destination in a timely manner. Even sometimes it might be your family. So let us consider all these things when we do decide to park in areas that would cause obstruction or likely to cause obstruction, which is another offense under the road traffic and the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Regulation. Because you may park in a particular way and now the traffic is not heavy, but lo and behold, shortly after, the obstruction may occur when two vehicles want to pass at the same time, or something may come up, and then at that particular time the obstruction is caused and you're not there to move your vehicle. And also we want persons to know that when you do park, it's at your own risk. So yes, you can be charged under for obstruction, but also you can be clamped or you can be towed away at your own expense. And you have to pay the clamp fee before you've been released, or the tow fee, and it will hurt your pocket. Imagine you just maybe parked for 2 minutes and then you'd clamped and you have to pay $125 of a parking ticket or a tow truck to get back your vehicle when you could have avoided that.
And I think that's part of the problem. We think that, oh, I'm just going to get something to come back. It's just going to be 2 minutes. And you don't know how long it's really going to take you. So you just park and you jump out of your vehicle and you go in. And it really slows down that person who's trying to probably get to an appointment to get an interview, who's trying to get to seek medical attention. It may not be an emergency vehicle, but that person is trying to seek attention, some medical attention as well, and you are obstructing that person from getting to point A to point B because you're so focused on, oh, you're just going for 2 minutes. So we have that sort of individualistic approach when we park in or we're doing certain things on the roads. Both pedestrians and drivers, I must say, not just drivers, and we don't consider the other because it's a shared space that we all use. So I suppose people have to just be a little bit more. Be more pragmatic and consider be more considerate in everything that we do, not just for the road traffic or while we're speaking about that, but I think we should just be a little bit more cognizant of the fact that while you might be taking 2 minutes, that 2 minutes you're obstructing the traffic is really preventing somebody else from accomplishing something that they really set the time to do, left them only to do it, but because of your negligence, you are now making them late for whatever it is that they're trying to get to. Yeah.
Yes, and that is so true. We cannot have the road as our private parking space. That is a no-no. And as I stated earlier on, once you've been clamped or towed, and in the process, the police would not be responsible for any damages incurred to your vehicle once it is not willfully or negligently done.
Right.
So persons need to be cognizant of that as well.
So then how then is the Royal Grenada Police Force addressing those two spots that I just mentioned, those two locations? But I'll leave you to think of it and maybe speak to your colleague about it. But I think it's something that needs to address. One of the
Yes,
other things that I
definitely.
see happen. One of the other things that I see happening a lot on our road is those drivers who feel that it's okay to stop in the middle of the road to talk to other people, or the drivers holding up the traffic because they're just doing an exchange. They want some change. I guess I'm going to use the Ghana area again. It happens all over, but I see it a lot happening in the Ghana's vicinity. Or somebody's walking and you want to talk to that person, but you just stop in the middle of the road, obstructing the traffic that is coming behind you. How do we address something like that?
Yeah. So just to start with, it is selfish and blatant disregard for law and order, especially in areas where traffic are built up. You want to have a conversation with somebody, or you need to exchange something with somebody, pull to the side, allow the traffic to flow freely, and then you get what you have to, or you whatever that needs to be done. But do not do it at the expense of other road users. As we stated too, it is disrespectful and selfish. As we said, 1 minute or 2 minutes of traffic, built up traffic, is a lot, especially in certain areas. And going back to the offense of obstruction, that is causing obstruction again. And once you do that, and the police observes him, you can be charged. Or persons can report drivers who constantly do those things along the road and impede the traffic. But drivers, please move to the side. If you do not have conversation and you hold up everybody, and as we were speaking of earlier on, somebody needs to get to an interview, and sometimes depending on how far the traffic is back, sometimes an emergency vehicle is coming and you just stay in the road, having your personal conversation or carrying out your personal business at the expense of other person's time. And we know time is money in this dispensation.
Right.
Because 1 minute can cost a business a lot. Can cost
Absolutely.
someone their life. Someone getting to have to get much medical assistance. So we need to be more responsible as drivers. That if it is conducive, you pull to the left side of the road and allow the traffic to flow. And if you have to exchange anything or carry out any business or conversation, but not at the expense. If the road is not conducive, try to make whatever you have brief and move on. Do not obstruct the free flow of traffic.
Right. I hope persons really be considerate of everyone. Do you think that there is a need for traffic codes in all of the parishes based on the statistics that we're now seeing in terms of the vehicular traffic? I know that only in the town of St. George that there is a traffic code to deal with incidences on our public roads in terms of the violation of the traffic and so on. Do you think, from your experiences, from your knowledge of what has been happening, do you think there's a need to have that in all of the parishes, including Carriacou and BT Martinique?
Just to start with a bit of statistics here, we're seeing there's a lot of traffic offenses on our road. By the way, if you're looking at traffic offenses for the year 2022, 2021, we're seeing in excess of over 4,000 plus traffic violations yearly. And that is
Again, that's a lot.
Tickets and so forth. And we have a lot of matters going to court, traffic matters going to court in excess of over 3,000 as years in some years. Sometimes you have up almost reaching 4,000 just traffic matters going to court. And also in accidents, we're seeing a lot of accidents along a road in excess of 2,000 per year. And that is a lot in relation to our road network, our population, etc. And having all those matters going to the court, especially, and that is only traffic.
Right.
We're not speaking of criminal offenses. That's it. And what those statistics that I gave is only for the south of the island, most less for other areas, the St. Andrews area, where the statistics are similar and it does not have a traffic court. So there's maybe a day given where they have traffic matters dealt with, but the excess of those numbers that we spoke of, and other parishes may not have as much, but I believe in the areas where the statistics are great, the consideration for having a traffic court in those areas so that we can expedite a lot of these matters. But more so, what we want is a reduction in the number of those statistics that we're seeing, because it is not good for a nation of that population to have such statistics. Despite when persons are charged, it brings some form of revenue to a country, but also what we want is to curb those driving patterns or the behavioral patterns of drivers, because at the end of the day, those offenses which they are being charged for, and we're still seeing it occurring because persons are charged almost on a daily basis for offenses, frequent offenses, like using mobile devices while driving, which is risky, speeding, failing to wear seat belts and defective tires and so on. This is a call for concern, not just having, because yes, the traffic code will help in curbing based on the amount being charged, and there's a fine and confine where persons have to consider when they go to the court. But the avenue in which we're speaking on that platform where we can bring that information to the drivers, pedestrians, and so forth, so that we can curb those ills that we're seeing happening in society. Because if persons continue, and those statistics are high, the numbers, especially the cell phone, and that is a major distraction. And for especially the public transportation, their fines are steeper in terms of the mobile devices and a lot of other offenses, because you're carrying passengers, you have person's life in your hand. But what is alarming is the number of those offenses, despite still having a traffic court. So it says they have a lot to do with the manner in which our drivers are driving on our road, and that is what we want to curb. So we need to implore onto the drivers to do not use your mobile device while driving. Maintain your vehicle properly. Check your tires. Make sure that they're not in a defective conditions. Buckle up. Your seatbelt. Save lives.
Driving under the influence seems to be a lot of that nowadays as well.
That is an ill that we do not want in our society. Driving under influence. That here is risky from the time the word alcohol is being mentioned, and it's more so you driving under the influence. And we here the limit here is 70 micrograms of alcohol in 100 milliliters of breath. When you look at the highway code and a lot of other countries, it's 35 micrograms of alcohol. So we're seeing here ours is twice a lot of countries. So when you think about drinking, and then you have to get to your destination, and we know here we have a lot of corners here, and a lot of places sometimes when we have built up traffic, pedestrians use our network a lot. Think about your life, the safety of others. But just going back, I believe that in the areas where the statistics are high, we can consider having maybe traffic courts in those areas to deal and to help curb those ills that we have. Because the purpose of those laws, when you're being charged and you have a fine, that it will hurt your pocket or affect you in some way that you wouldn't think about committing that offense again.
Right. So as we wrap up, I know that the Grenada Police Force get a lot of blame for a number of things. It's like, oh, you call the police officers, they're not showing up, they out of vehicles, they this, they that, and the other. So what I'm seeing here, that sometimes there are things that are preventing you guys from doing your jobs. I'm deducing that here. So, what are some of the difficulties that is inhibiting law enforcement in trying to reduce? And since we're talking about the drivers and traffic here, and you being from the traffic department, what are some of the challenges that law enforcement face? That I say that is sort of preventing them from doing their duties effectively in terms of the reckless and careless drivers on our public roads. What are some of the challenges that you guys are facing?
Some of the challenges I can think about is persons having a lack of knowledge for law and traffic offenses. Because as we stated earlier on, a lot of persons study the highway code to pass an exam or to get their driver's license, but not studying it more so to get the road experience that they desire or need in order to, as we said, to maneuver on our road network. Also, persons having the necessary laws, understanding the necessary laws, in relation under the Road Traffic Act and Road Traffic Regulation and the other amendments that comes up from time to time. Once persons does not have the knowledge, and therefore they would think that they're doing the right thing, and when they in return that they're breaking our laws along a road, because sometimes you hear a lot of persons say, "Well, I didn't know that that was an offense," and having to deal with every and any offense, it is a challenge, and going forward, especially because especially with the cell phone, a lot of persons will still tell you that I didn't know that it was not, and having an appreciation for and understanding fully what the law says in relation to a particular offense. Because a lot of people think that if I have my phone in my hand and it's not against my ear, then I didn't commit an offense. But the law says once you have it in your hand. And similar in relation to a lot of offenses, a lot of persons are ignorant of the fact of a lot of these offenses. Having understanding and obeying traffic signs and signals and symbols and so forth. These are the challenges. A lot of persons, I don't know if I know here that we doesn't have sufficient signs and so forth, but still we have signs that persons can adhere to, and yet still they does not adhere to those signs and signals and so forth along our roads. And that is a challenge, because when you do not adhere to it, we know what can be the end factors of you failing to comply with those signals, symbols, and so forth. We're seeing accidents and so on. And also, we stated that the challenge here in terms of the quantity of vehicles along our nation's road is a great challenge for law enforcement, having to deal with the built-up traffic and having to respond to a lot of scenes, and you have to, despite you might have siren, but at the end of the day, having siren in terms of a lot of how a lot of our roads are built, you cannot go anywhere, so you just have your siren there and you can't move. So there's a lot of other factors in terms of challenges, but dealing with those offenses along the road is that ignorance of the law is one of the greatest challenge, and a lot of persons are not doing what is expected of them by obeying our laws, obeying our traffic signs, and so forth. And we're seeing here what once you're ignorant of these things, and therefore it will become a big challenge for law enforcement. So I'm glad that avenues like these, which we are here now, that we can get those information out there so that persons can listen. And just going back, the proper channels in terms of getting those information out there, because we're seeing a lot of persons, they may not listen to our local radio and television when those information are disseminated. And so you may have a lot of the programs, but it is not reaching its targeted audience. And maybe choosing one of the more lucrative platforms like social medias and so on, where persons frequent, rather than the radio stations, because a lot of persons, when they go to their vehicle, they wouldn't maybe so go, unless it's their favorite radio station, their favorite TV station, or maybe a particular time based on what they may not even listen to the news to see what is relevant. And at the time, the most time persons listen to their favorite music via to whatever devices rather than the local radio stations and so forth. So you may think that I am on a radio station broadcasting this information so that persons can hear, and lo and behold, you're not reaching your targeted audience. So the information that you disseminated is hasn't reached where you want it to. So maybe considering the avenues that we choose to bring across the necessary information, so that persons can hear it and they can adhere to it, and therefore we can see a reduction in the number of statistics, in the number of traffic offences, the number of road accidents we have on our roads, and so that we can have a safe road for all our drivers and pedestrians and everyone using our road network.
Absolutely. So I suppose the PR department of the Royal Grenada Police Force now need to do some market research and see where the audience are. And as you rightfully said, most people are on social media, so you might want to do sponsored ads, and maybe it may have an impact. I'm not certain, but you have to go where the audience are, not necessarily where the traditional form of public relations or marketing was done. PC Paul, thank you so much for your time and giving us this informative information. I hope that persons will really do some introspection and realize that what is happening on our roads is unhealthy, it's unsafety. You don't want, when you have your kids out there, you're worried about them, you cannot function off work. It's going to make the entire society unproductive if every time there is an accident that holds up the traffic, that is preventing someone from doing something that they need to do. So I urge you guys to please be considerate when we are using the roads. Follow the same procedures that you did when you were learning to drive. You followed the highway code, you were doing all your hand signals, you were utilizing the use of your indicators, you were using the horn properly, not to just get somebody out of the road because you want to pass, right? So please be considerate of others and let us make our roads safe once again. We understand that there is a build-up in the traffic, but for now, we have the control over that. So try to leave home a little bit early. Be respectful of others. And sometimes you might just have the right of way, but it may not be conducive to let the traffic flow that smoothly. So 2 seconds, 10 seconds, and you let that person pass before you can save lives and also save time. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Paul, and Constable Paul. And thank you so much for your time. And guys, thank you for tuning into The Social Mind. And next week we will be discussing another social problem that affects our society. Thank you so much, and do have a productive day.
Thank you as well for having us on the platform.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
You are welcome.